Hello, everybody. Nelson Virtual here with ExcelMale and discountinglabs.com. I'm very happy here to have Dr. Ramasamy. We've done a webinar before on estradiol and anastrozole that was very popular. So he's a great speaker, great researcher. He is in Miami, and he'll let us know today about this product called Natesto. It's a testosterone nasal gel that you apply in your nostrils. Very interesting data that he has to show us from a study he did. And why don't we start and have Dr. Ramasamy welcome to the guys love you online. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and at in Miami.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nelson, for the opportunity. Yes, the previous seminar that we did on anastrozole was a total hit. So thank you very much. So the goal for today is to somehow discuss this product that's been FDA approved and has been in the market since 2012. So now for the last 6 years. It's called Natesto. It's as the name implies, it's nasal testosterone. So since I started before I started the clinical trial, honestly, I've actually never prescribed Natesto. Things that bothered me about Natesto where you had to put it up the nose. And I said, most men would not want to have anything, put up their nose. And the second thing that bothered me was the FDA prescription is to do it 1 pump in each nostril 3 times a day. And compliance with testosterone therapy in itself is not that great. And so I said to myself, how are men actually going to do it 3 times a day and keep up with it? So I was very averse to prescribing Natesto as a modality of testosterone therapy in men with low testosterone. But then after I looked at some of the recent data that were presented at the AUA, showing that the gonadotropins, the FSH and the LH, were decreased but not completely abrogated. I was very curious and wanted to see if this would be a treatment option for guys that want to maintain their fertility options and their sperm production options. Now, one of the main focuses of my practice here at the University of Miami is fertility. And I see a lot of young men with low testosterone who are in their 20s and 30s who are currently in the process of starting their family or have not yet completed their family and want to go on to receive exogenous testosterone therapy. Because right now, the options for low testosterone in men who want to preserve fertility are off-label medications such as Arimidex or anastrozole, clomiphene citrate, and ACG. And all of those 3 treatment options, albeit very effective, can have long-lasting side effects such as decreased libido, increased in estrogen, fluid retention, gynecomastia, and so on. So because of all of the negative side effects with those medications and because they're off-label, we wanted to see if we can use Natesto in a clinical trial in men who wish to preserve their sperm production. So one of the biggest problems is low testosterone that men face. And we estimated that about 10% of men below the age of 40 actually have low testosterone. And men less than 40 typically have either not started their families or have not completed their families and want to still keep the option of family building open. And so therefore, they absolutely seek out options for testosterone therapy that is not that is FDA approved and wants to use it on label. And some of the current treatments for testosterone therapy that's available on the market and are very popular are obviously injections with testosterone cypionate or enanthate, or the long-acting injection with testosterone and decanoate. And the topical testosterone treatment options are either the gels such as androgel for Testa and Testim, and testosterone patches such as Androderm, and finally testosterone pellets, which can be used every 3 to 6 months. Now, one of the most, go ahead.
Sorry. Can I have a question here? Because some of my people are going to definitely have a problem with the first statement on dosing of cypionate and enanthate, and the every 2 to 4 weeks. I know that's not how you prescribe it. It's what's written in the different
In the labels, yeah.
labels, but just real quick to clarify that sentence there.
Sure. So so that's what's in the label, and that we have to write these in talks like these. But when I give testosterone cypionate or enanthate, I usually use 100 to 200 milligrams IM or sub-Q if the patients don't want to use IM injections on a weekly basis. Because when you give it 2 to 4 weeks, then patients experience the troughs, and when they bottom out on their testosterone levels, it's not such a great feeling. So
Yeah.
I usually try and cut back on the dose, but give it more frequently. So not only are their peaks not that high, leading to all of the side effects, but their troughs are also not low, so they don't experience the symptoms of low testosterone.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
So some of the common side effects of testosterone therapy, I think we all know this. It's unfortunately received a lot of bad press lately because of its possible increased risk in cardiovascular events with MI, stroke, and pulmonary embolism. Obviously, some of the other side effects which we commonly know are hypertension and edema, and increase in hematocrit or polycythemia. And the most important side effect with the topical gels is the risk of transference. So patients are often concerned that they would pass it on to their wife or their kids. And so that's a big issue with trying to use topical gels. And of course, the biggest risk with this, you can go to the next slide. The biggest risk with testosterone therapy is it causes infertility. And why does testosterone therapy cause infertility? So testosterone therapy blocks the production of GnRH from the hypothalamus, which blocks the production of FSH and LH from the pituitary gland. And FSH is a very important hormone for sperm production, and LH is a very important hormone for intratesticular testosterone production. So if you don't have FSH, then you're not going to make sperm, and most likely your sperm count is going to be either low or going to be 0. Whereas if you don't have LH, then your body's own natural testosterone production is also going to get shut down. So any testosterone therapy that we currently have on the market, both including the gels, the injections, and the pellets, all basically do one thing. They shut down GnRH, they shut down FSH, they shut down LH, thereby both blocking sperm production as well as blocking your own natural testosterone production. And that's basically what these exogenous testosterones do. One of the important things is, as we made more and more advances in testosterone therapy, we went from shorter acting testosterone preparations. Testosterone propionate, as some of you may know, is probably the shortest acting testosterone injection. It's currently not FDA approved. They took it off the market, but that's what was the first testosterone preparation that was available back in the 50s, 60s, and in the 70s. And then we went from propionate to cypionate, and enanthate was a version of this. And then we went on to undecanoate, and then we went on to making pellets. Somehow we went from very short acting preparations to much longer acting testosterone preparations, because we wanted to make the patients more compliant. We wanted to see if this would be less cumbersome for men to be on testosterone therapy, potentially for basically their whole lives. Now, Natesto is actually the total opposite. It's actually the shortest acting testosterone preparation, and the peaks are achieved in a very short time, and the pulsatility is maintained. Let's go to the next slide. And so how common are fertility problems? Men always ask me this. They're like, doc, fine, I'm going to go on injections. I'm going to go on gels. What are my chances that I'm going to become infertile? And very nice study that done back in the 90s in Army recruits that basically showed that if you take testosterone cypionate, 200 milligrams intramuscular injection once a week, at the end of 3 months, there's a 65% chance you're going to have zero sperm count. You know, people think that it's a very good contraceptive. It's actually not. So 35% of the time, men will still have sperm production, but 2/3 of the time you will have zero. And so it's a contraceptive, but it's a terrible contraceptive. So men who are wanting to take testosterone therapy and think they're not going to make sperm, there is a 33% chance you're going to get your wife pregnant because there is a chance that you will still have sperm. But 2/3 of the time, you're going to have zero sperm count, and there's a 5% chance that the sperm count may never recover. Next one. So what's happening? Why is infertility a problem? I think men are now fathering children at older and older ages. We've seen this over the last decade, wherein the average age of new fathers has now increased to more than 35. And we do know that testosterone declines naturally with age, and it starts declining after the age 20. So it declines about 0.5 to 1% of what you started with once you reach 20 and above, which is very sad, because for men that start off with a lower level, their decline is much faster with age compared to men that start off at a much higher level. And so therefore, trying to target this population of young men who still want to have kids, but have consistent testosterone decline is a big problem that we're facing, which is what we're trying to address with this clinical trial. So we went over the current medications that are now used to increase testosterone in men that want to preserve fertility. The 3 medicines that we discussed were clomiphene citrate, anastrozole, and HCG. One of the nice things about anastrozole, it blocks the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, so therefore it increases your own natural testosterone. Clomiphene citrate blocks the estrogen receptor in the pituitary, thereby increasing FSH, LH, and therefore increases testosterone and therefore estrogen production. And HCG has been used a lot in men that want to preserve their testis size, as well as those that want to preserve sperm production. It's just very similar to LH. It increases your own natural testosterone production from the testicles.
Doctor, one more product, FSH, what do you think?
FSH, so exogenous FSH has been used to increase spermatogenesis. It's expensive and it has to be used 3 times a week, but in guys that cannot make FSH, so in people in adolescents who have hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, wherein their pituitary is not functioning and they cannot make FSH, then using FSH to try and increase the sperm production is absolutely useful. In some patients who come off of anabolic steroid use or testosterone therapy for a long time, if you try them on clomiphene citrate and HCG for about 3 to 6 months and their FSH doesn't improve and their sperm production doesn't improve, then trying to put them on FSH and trying to see if we can get some sperm production back is very useful. But those are the only 2 indications where I try and use exogenous FSH for.
Thanks a lot.
So why are we concerned about these treatments? All of these medications have side effects. Anastrozole can cause hypertension, back pain, dyspnea, edema, and blocking estrogen for a long time is not good because estrogen is a very important hormone for the bones. And some of the doses of anastrozole that was used basically bring down the estrogen to almost negligible. And so therefore it has to be carefully titrated to make sure the estrogen decreases, but at the same time doesn't become negligent. Clomiphene citrate, Clomid, I'm sure people have taken Clomid and have had their own side effects with flushing, weight gain, and fatigue. And with HCG, it also has side effects because it increases testosterone that converts to estrogen. But again, it's an injection, it's expensive, and often not covered by insurance and has to be used on a weekly, if not bi-weekly basis. So
let me add something about HCG. It's not expensive. It's only expensive if you use the pharmaceutical grade.
Correct.
But compounding pharmacies make it cheaply. So
that's exactly right. Yes.
And so, yeah. And all the other ones too can be sold by compounding pharmacies for people.
Correct.
Because insurance, like you said, these are off-label.
Correct.
Insurance companies don't like to pay for it because it's label for men. So it's usually a cash kind of a deal where doctors have to pay. Yeah, all right.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Thanks a lot. Okay, that what we just said about the fact
Yes,
that it's off-label, meaning not FDA approved in males, only females, but there's nothing illegal about using them off-label. Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
All right, good.
When I meant expensive, I meant that it's just not covered by insurance, that patients often have to pay cash from compounding pharmacies, as opposed to testosterone therapy, which will actually get covered by insurance as long as you have a low T level. So what is Natesto? So Natesto is it's a nasal testosterone. It delivers 11 milligrams of testosterone per pump per nostril, and it's used 3 times a day. In Canada, it's approved BID twice a day. In the US, the FDA has approved it 3 times a day. And the levels peak in about 40 to 60 minutes. So it's like an on-demand testosterone. So this is not a medication wherein testosterone levels are high throughout the day, like androgel. Not a medication wherein, like cypionate or enanthate, where testosterone levels are high for about 2 or 3 days in a row before it starts to decrease before you start the injection. Certainly not like pellets, wherein levels are high for weeks together. So all of the hormones that we discussed with GnRH, FSH, and LH, they're all pulsatile. They have a peak, they have a trough, they have a peak, they have a trough throughout the day. And when you give exogenous testosterone with injections and gels, all of that pulsatility goes away. No more GnRH pulsatility, no more FSH and LH pulsatility, certainly not the testosterone from the testes. Whereas Natesto, I think what it does, we certainly don't have the complete trial data, but I'm happy to show some of the preliminary data, is because it has its peak in 40 to 60 minutes, and it actually washes out in 3 to 4 hours before you're ready for the next dose. I think because it's pulsatile dosed, the GnRH, and so therefore the FSH and the LH actually is preserved. It decreases, don't get me wrong, it goes down. So in the initial, I'll show some of the data, FSH and the LH decrease, but it's not zero. It does not go down to become undetectable. And so I think the little FSH and the LH that is maintained on Natesto is probably sufficient for sperm production to be maintained. And again, this is a hypothesis-based investigator-initiated study. We get some partial support from the company, but this is certainly not an industry-funded study. Because this is hypothesis generating, we have to wait for the final data to make certain conclusions, but I think that's what's happening.
One question, you mentioned Canada as a dose of twice a day. Is that
Yes.
a bigger dose or just
No, it's the same dose that was just approved twice a day as opposed to 3 times a day, 1 pump per nostril.
Okay, so that can tell us, okay, so we'll proceed.
So what did Natesto do? So in a study that was presented at the AUA last year from the group in Boston, they showed that testosterone increased from a baseline of 200 to 420. So I don't think you're going to get levels of 800 to 900 to 1,000. You're going to at least try and get to the target range of 400 to 600 in guys that start off from 200. Interestingly, the FSH and the LH levels, as you can see with the BID and the TID, BID was from the Canadian studies and TID was from the US studies. The FSH and the LH go down from 8 and 6, it goes down to 6 and 3. And the LH goes down from 5 to 3 and 2. It certainly decreases, but the nice thing to show is that it does not become undetectable, which happens 95% of the time in men who take injections, androgel, gel, and other gels, and pellets. So testosterone increased to normal levels to at least the target range beyond the 300 levels, but the FSH and the LH decreased, but certainly remained within normal limits. Now, it's nice to say that FSH, LH is decreased, but so we should start giving it, but no semen analysis was performed as part of the study. So one of the biggest goals of our study was to show that the sperm parameters are actually maintained when you take Natesto. And so why does Natesto maintain FSH and LH? And I think we spoke about a little this. Can you click again, Nelson? I think what happens with GnRH is there are fast pulses and slow pulses. So GnRH is actually every 1 hour from the hypothalamus, there is a GnRH pulse that's produced. As long as you have fast pulses, your LH gets produced. If you slow down the frequency, instead of every 1 hour and produce 1 pulse every 4 hours, your LH is not produced, but the FSH is still produced. So even if you decrease the pulsatility of GnRH, your FSH production is maintained. And as long as the FSH production is maintained, your sperm production is also maintained. And so this is a nice pharmacokinetic study with Natesto. Very surprising to see. I mean, if you see the 3 doses that men take over the range of, over the course of 24 hours, on the x-axis, that's hours starting from 0 to time to 24 hours. And on the y-axis, you see the serum total concentrations that are reached. So you see as soon as time 0, you see the peak is achieved between 30 to 40 minutes within the 1 hour, and the peaks go up on average to about 700 to 800. And then you see by hour 2 to hour 3, the levels are almost back down to where they started. And then you wait for the next peak, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, because of testosterone testing variations, there's wide standard deviations with testosterone levels that got measured in these guys. But it's interesting to note that during the times that testosterone is back down to the baseline, I think the FSH and the LH start getting produced from the brain. And during the times that testosterone is high, the FSH and the LH production is stopped. So because this whole concept of pulsatility is still maintained, I think we are able to get away with giving testosterone on demand. And it's a very new concept, right? I mean, men always say, Doc, I want my levels to be high before I go to the gym. I want my levels to be high before I have sex. I want my levels to be high in the evenings. And if you ask most men, they're like, they don't care that their levels are high when they sleep, right? Although there is some research showing that majority of the muscle building happens during sleep, it's tough to know exactly what the levels are when the guys are sleeping. So this concept is sort of on demand. You know, it's I would equate this to similar to Cialis and Viagra, wherein Cialis is marketed as a pill that you could have sex anytime during the 24 to 36 hours, but the best activity is seen at 2 hours. Whereas Viagra is on demand. You've got to use it and have sex between the 1 to 2 hours after you take it. So I think Natesto, moving forward, I see it as probably going to be used as an on-demand increase in testosterone rather than guys that say that they want to have increased levels throughout the day. So what are we doing? So we are recruiting men between the age of 18 to 55. They have to have a decent sperm concentration, so they cannot have too much infertility. And so their sperm concentration needs to be greater than 5 million. And we are looking at changes in testosterone, LH, FSH, both that and their semen parameters at 3 months, because that's how long it takes for one spermatogenesis cycle, and at 6 months. And as part of the study, we're providing the Natesto for 6 months and doing all of the semen analysis free of charge. All of their lab values, of course, get billed through the insurance, and they need to qualify for the study in order to get enrolled into the study.
Doctor, and if they decide not to stay on the drug, are they just taken care of and put on TRT, on testosterone?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, no, I don't leave them alone. Yeah.
Okay, so you actually, okay, good. That's
no, I actually treat them. If they decide to take the drug and they want to come off of the trial because either they didn't like it, or some guys with sinus infections and allergies can no longer use the drug and want to come off the trial, I put them on other modes of TRT. Yes, absolutely.
Good. Yeah, thank you.
So this is basically the study timeline. It's a 6-month study. It's pretty involved. So guys that are out of town, it's fairly hard to do. So we're truly targeting men in the South Florida area who could come visit with us at least for 3 visits during the 6 month, to do the semen analyses, and to also get testosterone, FSH, and LH levels along with estrogen during the other visits. And so we've recruited a total of 23 men in the study so far. The average age is around 35. Their starting testosterone level was 227. So these young guys with such a low T level, this is definitely worrisome, because young men, your levels should be somewhere 350 to 400 or even higher. So we've measured this on the morning before 10 o'clock on 2 separate dates. So unless you qualify for the study to get less than 350, you can't get enrolled in the trial. And they have normal FSH, LH levels, and their sperm concentration and their motility is all fairly normal. So this is the, let's go back to the data. So this is the data that's at 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. So we obviously don't have all of the 23 patients completed so far. At the 1 month time point, about 93% of patients had levels beyond 300. About 62% at the 3 month time point had levels beyond 300, and 4 out of 5 patients at 6 months had beyond 300. And one of the reason the 3 month data doesn't look that great is we learned that you had to draw the levels, like I showed the pharmacokinetic data, that the levels, the blood has to be drawn within an hour to 2 after they take their Natesto. So if we don't get that within that hour to 2, we know when you're looking at 4 to 5 hours after your levels, go back to baseline to where you started. So I think it was just one of these findings that we found as we did the study along. We were trying to question as to why the levels were low, even though the guys were feeling great. It's just that we were not measuring it appropriately. But we've now fixed that problem with our lab, and we're trying to get the levels done within an hour to 2 after they take the medication. So levels do go up, certainly not in everyone, but as you can tell, most of the men are fairly happy and satisfied on the trial.
Doctor, how do you measure compliance, adherence to therapy?
So we give them only the amount of canisters that they need for that from one visit to the other. And they are asked, because this is a controlled substance, they're asked to bring back all of the canisters with them. So we can tell if the canisters are empty or not, and whether they have used up the canisters or not, unless they're squirting it all outside, which I hope, man.
There are ways around
the study. Yeah, exactly.
Having enough few.
Yeah. So hopefully they're not doing it, but that's how we assess compliance with empty canisters.
And could we go real quick on describing what the numbers below mean? Is that?
Sure. So basically the number of patients above 300. So we wanted to see the number of patients that were brought from the baseline levels of less than 300 to the percentage of patients that ended up having a normal T level. That's what the percentages mean. And on the blue bars are basically the average testosterone levels that were reached. Obviously at 6 months, it's only 5 patients at 6 months that have completed it. We have more data now, we'll update this, but we could tell that most of them ended up having levels in the 600 to 800 range at the 6 month time point.
Were you able to measure quality of life, like ADAM questionnaire or something, sexual drive? How do you guys feel at, should I move on with the presentation?
Yeah, you can, but no, so absolutely. So one of the, we're not using the ADAM questionnaire, but we're using the IIEF questionnaire to measure sexual life and sexual activity. And I can tell you most of these young guys are already fairly sexually active, and so they not necessarily have erectile dysfunction. But we're also measuring quality of life with the SF36 questionnaire, which is a validated questionnaire because we can actually measure if there are changes in quality of life. And I don't know, I think we have data on the 3 month time point. I'll go back and look, but because they started off very well in the beginning, most of these guys were very happy. Their questionnaires didn't change much. But I can tell you from just talking to patients, they're all fairly, very happy. Again, very surprising because I never prescribed this medicine. And I didn't think this was going to work. And I told myself I'm never going to give this. And I didn't think men would be willing to stay on the medicine, would be willing to take the medicine, would be willing to put something up their nose 3 times a day. But I have to tell you, Nelson, I'm fairly surprised with number of patients that want to get on the trial and want to stay on the trial enough that after they finish the trial, the company we provide a coupon code through a specialty pharmacy, and most of them, as long as they have good insurance companies, they pay $10 a month copay for this. So good. I'm surprised. I'm still surprised.
Well, good. Hey, so am I.
So this is the semen parameters data. So let me explain this a little bit. On the first 3 red bars are the sperm concentration. So the concentration is million sperm per cc. So the red bars show that at baseline, they started off at 20 million. If you truly look at men who take injections or pellets, their concentrations at 3 months and 6 months should be almost 0. like we said, 2/3 of the men should have 0 sperm count at the end of 3 months if you take testosterone cypionate. This was fairly shocking and surprising, and obviously in a good way, that their sperm concentrations are actually maintained both at 3 months and at 6 months. And the green bars represent percentage in motility, so meaning number of sperm that are moving, or percentage of sperm that are moving. At baseline, when you look at the first green bar, the percentage of sperm was moving, that was about 50%. And then when you look at the motility at 3 months and 6 months, there's no differences between these three things, and the motility is also maintained. And interestingly, TMSC is the total motile sperm count. It's basically a multiplication of concentration motility times the semen volume, and that is also maintained between 3 months and 6 months. So this is a first study that has actually showed, and this is the only trial that's being done in the US now, showing that sperm parameters are actually maintained on exogenous testosterone therapy. People have showed it with clomiphene citrate, with anastrozole, with HCG, and Dr. Lipschultz has shown it when men use testosterone cypionate in combination with HCG, but this is the first one to show just by testosterone alone that you're able to maintain semen parameters. So this is the study results so far. 23 patients out of 40 have been recruited. 8 have completed the 3-month time point. 5 have completed the 6-month time point, and 6 patients have dropped out of the study. One patient, their reproductive endocrinologist, the wife's doctor, told them they have to stop. This is testosterone therapy. Which doctor put you on this? You know, your sperm count is going to become 0. This is crazy. And so he stopped it. Another patient stopped. A couple of patients actually stopped because of the rhinitis, because there was the allergy season and they couldn't take the nasal spray along with the gel, and so he had to drop out. And 2 of them could not come to follow-up appointments because the study was just so rigorous. We needed to get 2 testosterone levels at the 3-month visit along with 2 semen analyses, and the same thing to be done at 6 months as well. So they just couldn't make it up to the follow-up appointments, so 6 have dropped out. This did not belong to the 23. 23 patients have actually completed the study, but 6, this is outside of the trial numbers from the 23.
Yeah, I used the product, and I like that rush afterwards, especially going to the gym. But I did tend to have headaches and obviously my blood pressure, which is always the borderline high,
Yeah.
and sinus stuffiness, and that's really they bother me the most, the sinus stuff. So, but hey, you feel it. So anyways, let's move on.
I mean, listen, Nelson, I think it's, it'll be nice. And I was talking to one of the other patients that day, wherein I think if we can get some sort of a bit, like how you use daily Cialis and then Viagra on demand to have sex. I think this would be a new venue wherein you can get some sort of a baseline testosterone level, let's say with HCG or with a very low dose exogenous testosterone, and then use Natesto just on demand, right? I'm going to go to the gym today. I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I want to get my levels high on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Take the Natesto, right? I think in a few years from now, I think that's where this is going to find its most applicability. Being on Natesto lifelong, 3 times a day, 2 pumps every day. I think that I don't think this is going to be a lifelong, long-term treatment option. I think it's going to serve very well as an on-demand treatment option. And I don't think it's even being used in that venue right now, because the market share for Natesto, I think it's probably less than 1% among all testosterone therapy users.
Yeah. And one more question. Are there any data out there on the effect of how long after a peak of testosterone somebody feels, boosting whatever, energy, sex drive? Do we require an average certain level? And obviously everybody's different. Or can a boost in testosterone an hour or half an hour before sex or working out actually means better performance? So that's where I'm trying to struggle, because I don't think I've ever seen that data on this.
No, I don't think we have. And some people say that muscle building doesn't even start until 2 to 3 hours after the workout, right? I mean, so it's tough to know when when we should be dosing this, right? I don't think we have data to show that, which is why, we should just have high T levels all the time. This is a good idea. So you don't have to worry about when the muscle building actually happens. So I think we don't have, so to answer the question, so I don't think we have data on what the most efficacy is, but I think men will probably, and doctors will probably use it in ways to feel better, right? I mean, you told me you feel the rush an hour after, and if you'd rather have the rush right before going to the gym, or right after you wake up, or right before you go to bed, that's when you want to have the rush. And I think just because it's a steroid, right? I mean, let's be honest here. We are dealing with a steroid. Steroids make people feel better, and so the steroid rush, whenever it is that people want to feel, they're going to use it as on an as-needed basis on what makes them feel better.
And what was the average peak? It was like 800, right?
Yes, 600 to 800, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add? As I said, I'm very surprised about the data when I saw it. That's why obviously we're having this webinar. Besides, you were overdue. You have a following. You have a fan club now in ExcelMale and everywhere else. But so when do you think you're going to finish the study? You're looking for patients right now, right?
Yes, that's correct. We're looking for a total of 40 patients. I anticipate to have enrolled everybody, like at least the 40 patients enrolled by October, November. And so we will have the complete trial data, like the 6 months everybody would have finished, I guess sometime around March, April.
So how many more do you need for Miami or for Lauderdale, I guess?
About 15 to 20.
Okay, cool. I'll get the word out. So hopefully,
Thank you.
You enroll quickly. We really need this data. It's a very interesting approach that, I mean, I've had doctors and friends of mine that work in the field. They forwarded me your study, your first preliminary poster, I think it was, right?
Yes, that's correct, yes. The papers, I will send you along the paper, and you can probably put the link along with the video. It should be published in European Urology Focus, hopefully within the next few weeks. It's already accepted. It's just in the proof stage, so I'll get it to you as soon as it's published.
Good. So, hey, thank you so much. We're looking forward to more topics from you, obviously, So Perfect. I'll be... next time you have even an update, maybe on the data, we can review it. So, and any other studies that you're enrolling right now?
We are also doing a study for erectile dysfunction using shockwave therapy. And so those are the only 2 clinical trials that I'm enrolling right now.
And how about any of the stem cell work that you've done?
With the lytic stem cells, we've applied actually for an IND from the FDA to get exemptions to start using it in humans. That should hopefully be available within the next year, but I will let you know.
Wow. Okay, good. All right, that's exciting. All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching the video. As I said, go to ExcelMale.com, register for updates, and thank you again, Dr. Ramasamy. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Nelson. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.